The long-awaited summer holiday had finally arrived. I was looking forward to a 10-day adventure with 3 of my friends from university. The excitement before the trip had completely engulfed us. We had packed our bags the day before, packed our beach gear, and my mom handed us the car as we set off towards freedom. The weather was sunny, and the first few hours of the journey passed with pleasant conversations and laughter. At some point, we got hungry and took a break at a restaurant on the motorway. After a delicious meal, we set off again. As the hours passed, the sky darkened and tiredness began to set in. At that moment, a car appeared behind us. Its headlights dazzled us. It quickly caught up and matched our speed. We felt a little uncomfortable, but took it in our stride. After a while, Sam checked the sat-nav and told us that we still had 11 hours to go. Despite my tiredness, I was so excited that I felt like I could drive all night. Sam checked the sat-nav again and said that there were roadworks 70 kilometers ahead and the road would narrow. This news made us a little uneasy. As we approached the roadworks, the road actually narrowed to a single lane with barriers on both sides. The lighting was inadequate and we were surrounded by darkness. The only source of light was the car's headlights. Sam checked the sat-nav while Mauro and Sebastian had already fallen asleep. After a while, lights appeared in the darkness ahead of us. These lights were the rear lights of a truck that was driving slightly ahead of us. Sam noticed the truck and advised us to approach it. Thinking it prudent to stay close to another vehicle on a deserted road, I approached the truck. As we approached the back of the truck, we realized that it belonged to a transport company. We started to guess what it was carrying and jokingly made bets with Sam. While we were chatting and having fun, another car pulled up behind us. We followed the truck, and the other car followed us in single file. As the truck couldn't drive very fast, both cars were forced to keep up with its speed. When Sam fell asleep too, we drove on. Then something very strange happened. The rear door of the truck began to open from top to bottom. For a moment, I didn't understand what was happening. I rubbed my eyes. I stepped lightly on the brakes and slowed down. The rear door of the truck opened completely, touching the ground and forming a ramp-like structure in front of us. Suddenly, my eyes were drawn into the truck, and I was horrified. Inside the truck were several men in yellow overalls, holding long guns and wearing yellow masks. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I suddenly slammed on the brakes. The car behind us hit us from behind and pushed us inside the truck. When the truck suddenly braked and the car behind us pushed us, we found ourselves inside the truck. While we were trying to understand what was happening, a car door opened and a smoking object was thrown inside. The smoke from this object left us stunned and unable to move, but we understood what had happened. We were in the car, and the car was in the truck. As we drove on for a while, we suddenly had the feeling that we were on a bumpy road. After a while, we realized that the truck had stopped. When the truck stopped, a couple of men quietly opened the side door of the truck. When the door opened, we saw that the surroundings were very bright. It wasn't daylight, the brightness came from the projection lights around us. As I looked around, I realized that we were in a place in the middle of the woods with lights and various equipment scattered around. It wasn't long before the men in yellow suits and masks pulled us out, lined us up next to each other and placed an identical yellow mask on each of our faces. Slowly, I began to understand what was happening. The effect of the gas began to wear off. As I looked around, there were many men in yellow suits and masks. There were lights and cameras. At first, I thought we were on a movie set. But then I remembered the guns and realized that we had been kidnapped. I turned to my friends, then looked at the men and asked them what they wanted from us. The men around us burst out laughing. Then I tried to stand up and realized that my hands and feet were tied. One of the men came up to me and slapped me a few times. Another man came forward and explained why they had kidnapped us. For pleasure. He said that they'd inflict various tortures on us and carry out some experiments on us, which they then record and keep as souvenirs. We were all horrified. The men started beating us up. All my friends were screaming. I was screaming too, but there was nothing we could do. At one point I heard Mauro scream, "My eye!" Then Mauro screamed again, "That damn guy poked my eye out!" The bad guys laughed and said, "Don't worry, now we'll take out your friend's eye and swap both your eyes." I tried to scream in horror and understand what was happening. As the bad guys continued to torture us, things got out of control. Morrow couldn't bear the torture, and at some point his voice fell silent. When I saw him lying motionless on the floor, I realized that he was dead. The bad guys kept beating us, and at some point I thought that we couldn't escape from here, so I stopped resisting and shouted at them, "Just kill us, that's enough." One of the bad guys pointed at me and said, "Let's finish this one off last." At that moment, I saw two men carrying a large bucket coming towards me. They placed the bucket next to Sam. When the two men asked the others to step back, the men gathered around Sam. Then they poured the contents of the bucket over Sam's head, and Sam screamed in agony as he burned. Sebastian and I witnessed everything, and Sebastian couldn't stand it any longer and fainted. The men paused for a while. There were only two people near us, who were busy with the camera. They were probably checking the recording. I noticed that Sebastian hadn't moved for a while. I thought I had to save myself and made a plan. I saw my car inside the truck. I thought that if I could somehow get into the car, I could get the car out of the top of the truck and escape. Then an idea came into my head. I reached for the puddle of acid on the floor and tried to melt the ropes around my feet. I succeeded. Some of the ropes melted. Then I reached out to melt the ropes around my hands in the same way. When I put my hand into the puddle of acid, I felt a sharp pain. My hands were burning. I screamed in pain. The men heard me and ran towards me. As the ropes around my feet had melted, I got up and ran. The men chased me from behind. Bullets whizzed through the air. With the last of my strength, I ran towards the door of the truck. I had almost reached the car when I stumbled and fell to the ground again, but I got up and kept running. The sound of bullets got closer and closer. At one point I stumbled and fell to the ground again. I tried to get up, but my legs couldn't carry me. I realized that I had been shot. I lay on the ground in pain as the men came towards me. I looked around one last time. The sky was still dark. I heard a siren in the distance. I thought that was the sound of redemption. It was. I couldn't stay awake because of the bleeding. I woke up in the hospital. I asked the police about them and they said one of them ran away. That was 2 years ago now, but I'm still scared.